and dried flower arrangement, is also the founder of Area Designs, a significant architectural interior practice based in Singapore and Bali. With an extensive portfolio that includes residential, commercial, and hospitality projects throughout the world, including Asia, the Middle East, and the Americas, Cheong is well known for his work on luxury hotels and private getaways. Much of his work is in economically growing, culturally strong, and tradition-rich environments, which facilitate designs that blend local and international, modern with traditional. Sensibility is an important component of all his projects. Sensibility that asks, what story is to be told? Accordingly, source cultures are often studied, and projects evolve into unique forms representing context, materials, technology, and the environment, with emphasis on creating harmonious and sustainable environments by drawing inspiration from the unique surroundings of each individual location, using local and reclaimed materials. To discuss designing to save a shaft, please welcome Cheong.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cliff, for having me here. Okay. The craft, a craft basically means a proficiency or skill in making things. But I think in the context of today's talk, it can encompass so much more. It's often artisanal, it's cultural, it's social, it's environmental, and maybe even sometimes political. The craft that I'm going to talk about is one of the humble brick. Brick making and bricklaying. Ironically, so in this house you can see that there's been an attempt to use this material in a more modern way, in a more contemporary way, in a more celebratory way. The first house is built 15 years ago. It came after me having done 5 other houses nearby in a very traditional and vernacular way. And when this project came up, I was very conscious of not wanting to do the same thing all over again. So it is a modern language of flat roofs, floor slabs, concrete. And when I sent it to friends, they were all surprised. What are you going to do? And in this area, I think because of its rural context, whilst I needed to be modern, I also felt I needed to blend in. And what better way of blending in than using the same material that's found outside in a neighbor's house, which is this brick. The original owner, the still owner, he's no longer alive, offered to make these bricks for me. It took him 1 year, but I think the results are worth it. This is an entrance space that goes off into another space, and you can see here how imperfect it was, the handcraftedness of the brick, as well as the moss and the patina that's been growing on this wall for the past 10 years. This space overlooks the central garden, where you can clearly see the more modernist aspects of the house with the concrete roofs. On the right side, you see a brick core, which this is the inside. It's an outdoor shower, and you can see how the walls have become kind of antiques, not unlike the panels that are on it, and how it juxtaposes with the more modern parts of the house. Going past the pool, you can see another image, again, which shows how the concrete and the brick wall works together. how the water and the fire works together, and how this whole thing, in its kind of elemental way, but modern, sits in this very raw and kind of primitive part of Bali. The next house I want to show you is for an American woman who liked this wall and wanted the same thing. And I said, I'm not prepared to do it again. And I suggested using a simple brick. And she said, I don't want a gas station. But I finally managed to convince her to build this. So this is the gas station that I didn't want to build for her. It's on a very narrow side, full of trees, very vertical, and the house kind of celebrates this verticality. As you can see, there are a couple of big, tall, two-story brick walls, and there's another one on the other side, not in the picture. So for this one, I've consciously chosen to choose the smallest brick, the roughest brick, kind of like in contrast to the large scale of the wall. Now, she likes the wall. The next house is for an American couple who has been in Indonesia for a long time, and they also didn't want to live in the vernacular house. But their brief to me was that they wanted it Indonesian. And being huge collectors of antiques and textiles, I kind of decided to take some of the collection from 5 major textile islands, which is Sumatra, Borneo, Timor, Java and Bali, and abstracted them into these brick walls. This is the living room, and you can see on the right side what I call the Sumatra wall with its patola pattern, and the other one, the Timor wall in front, with its striations and its proportion. They have been done in a way that looks like sculpture. As you can see in this middle wall, being the dominant thing in the living room, I wanted it sculptural and strong. But at the same time, I thought I needed to soften its muscularity with some delicacy. Hence all these little holes, which allow light and air to come through, which also allows you to see the garden beyond. And on evenings, when little candles are put into those holes, it can become quite magical. This house is not just about brick, it also is very concerned with nature. As you can see in this next slide, how part of the garden is very much integrated and brought into the house. The next one is started off as a challenge. It actually belongs to a good friend of mine who asked me to do his house. And as architects know, there's not something you want to do for obvious reasons. But he said 4 words that changed my mind. Do anything you want. So this is it. This is arguably the most sensitive site amongst all the 4 projects. Right behind this house is one of the biggest temples in Ubud. Huge complex, prayers all months. And it is this area that he challenged me to do a modern house. And when we were walking the site in the beginning, there was a big palm frond which landed on the ground. And I was looking at the leaves, these long leaves, and thought how wonderful it is if you can just turn that leaf into a ribbon of concrete and make it rise and fall, twist and turn into the house. But easier said than done. So basically it has been broken up into 3 buildings, a studio building, a guest room, and a main house. This picture was taken when all the formwork came down, and you can see all these walls flying in the air, kind of silhouetted, kind of not unlike the pitch roofs of the surrounding village, and also the mountains that we can see from the house in the distance. So I thought I needed to ground this house, and what better way of doing it than with earth. There is not a single right angle in this house. The slabs are beam free, they are thicker in the middle, tapers towards the end, and they have a live all its own. And I thought the brickwork should also have that same quality. We use the brick very simply here, plain, unadorned, but kind of sculptural. And because of its plainness, it also receives art very well. This is the view of the living room, the same space from the other angle. And you can see how these walls and the concrete combine to form different spaces. There's not one single similar space in the entire house. On the left is, so these spaces rise and soar. This is probably the tallest space in the whole house, 4 meters on the left, and dipping down into very intimate spaces, not more than 2 meters high, in the bathroom. So you can see here the brick wall is plain. It doesn't have the patina of the first house. It doesn't have the scale of the second house. It doesn't have the ornamentation of the third house. It's just plain and simple, but it blends in its geometry. It blends in with light. And this is the last slide, and I think it sits kind of happily in the afternoon sun. Thank you.
Thank you.